I'm Josh, I'm an investment researcher and a qualified actuary, and whilst at university I applied for over 15 grad schemes and internships. After receiving a number of offers, I secured my current role at my current employer, so here's my brutally honest advice based on my experience and what I know now. So let's get into it. So the first thing I would do is get some broad and varied experience. Lots of people just focus on getting their degree at university and then maybe going out and partying and making friends. But the real thing that will set you apart when you get to your grad interviews and your assessment centres is your broad and diverse experience. So some things that I did that really helped and contributed towards my application. I got a job alongside my studies at a bar. I competed in a musical competition. I joined a society at university and got position of seniority at that society. So some roles and responsibilities. I played water polo, so some team sports there. And I worked as a lifeguard in the summer. The reason why you want to get broad and diverse experience is because you need a broad range of stories to tell and examples to give when you get asked questions in an interview. It's much more interesting if you had a broad range of diverse stories to talk about rather than just keep using the same example. The idea is that you're multifaceted, you're multi-skilled, and you can be put into situations and deal with them well, whereas academia is actually a very linear kind of tracked. It's very one-dimensional in my opinion. So the more broad and diverse experience you have, the better your application is going to be. Some things that I wish I'd done actually prior to my application was invested more of my own money or learned how to trade or learned how to invest and experience the market to some extent. I wish I'd tried to start a business. I think that's easier now, but that would have been an amazing skill set to have. I wish I'd started a YouTube channel. That would have helped my presentation skills. I wish I'd focused in on my long distance cycling. I later took that up while I was working, but I think that's an amazing thing to do while you're time rich and cash poor, because you can travel the world and you get some very kind of good experiences out of that. And I wish I played ice hockey as well, because I played water polo. I'd never played water polo before, but I was actually really good at ice hockey. I had all the kit. So if I'd been part of the ice hockey team, I think I could have done better. I would have enjoyed it more. And it goes back to playing to your strengths rather than trying to do new things or whatever. If you have a broad range of diverse experiences, it means you've got more to draw on in your interviews and your application. I would also take some of those experiences and just press them really hard. And that will help you differentiate you in an interview as well. So for example, I wish I'd done a really long distance cycle so I could talk about it in an interview, and that will set me apart from my peers. Whereas if you go into your interview and saying, I spend all my time doing maths and I'm really good at maths, then typically everyone in that interview has loads of great maths experience and loads of great maths accolades. So not a good one to go in with. It's better to differentiate yourself in a different area, which is not something I'd learned about. The second thing I would do is apply to loads and loads of jobs and internships. So this is something I actually did. I applied to over 15, as I stated in the intro. And I think by nature of applying to these internships, you kind of get further and further through the process. You get drilled in how they ask questions. All of the different companies that are out there kind of have the same sort of formula. You start to learn what they're looking for, and then you can update your CV and your skill sets based on that experience. So I would do as much as possible. Also, Gary Stevenson says in his book Trading Game that your degree is basically like a lottery ticket to get a grad job in banking. Think of each application as a lottery ticket, because once you get that grad job, you're set for life. The more swings of the bat you get, the more chance you hit a home run. So I definitely did this. I started applying to all the spring weeks because a lot of the banks and consulting firms had spring internships, which was just like 1 week during the spring term. And that got me familiar with the application process. I then went all in on the internships, applied to loads of those as well, got a number of offers, made my way through the various assessment centres, and gradually through doing that, learned what they're looking for and drilled my responses to a lot of the standard interview questions. What I wish I'd done is apply for more grad jobs and different grad jobs to get more experience. Actually, I found applying for jobs quite enjoyable by that stage, and knowing that I already had a backstop of an offer meant I could have taken more risk potentially and just tried different things. To be honest, at that point, I got quite exhausted with the application process and I just wanted to relax. But in hindsight, I wish I kind of pushed things forward as well. At that point as well, I actually had some greater credentials at university. So I was president of an investment society, for example, which is skills and positions that I never actually leveraged into the job market, which I wish I'd done at that point. Third thing I would do is make sure that this is my number one priority while I'm at university. So I definitely did this in my third year, which is when I was applying for internships. I did a 4-year course. So most jobs and companies only really require you to get a 2-1 at university, which means that you don't really need to be shooting the lights out with a first or a super high first. You just need a 2-1 to get through the door. So I would focus the majority of your attention on trying to get the jobs and developing the skills you need to get the jobs and developing your CV as well. Getting a really good degree might get you so far, but it's really those broad, diverse experiences that are really going to carry you forward into your job market, which is ultimately unless you're going into academia, that's ultimately what you're looking to get. So 4th thing that I would do is demonstrate that I could succeed in a team. So the best way of doing this is being a member of a sports team that actually is successful. I think that demonstrates your ability to be able to work as a team and work towards a kind of predefined goal, which is a lot of what the work world is largely about. Another way of doing this, they had a big kind of economic forum at Warwick when I was there, which was a huge event, which must have taken a lot of organising to put on. And I think being part of that would have actually been really helpful as well. So yeah, definitely demonstrate that you can work as a team, because business is essentially a team sport. So it's really important that you can do that. As I mentioned, I was a member of various sports teams, but I wish I'd done something where I was actually good at the sport. So either rugby or I mentioned ice hockey, because I felt like then I would have been able to make a better contribution to the team and been part of that team's success more, rather than just being on the periphery and not being that involved, because I wasn't actually that good yet, because I was learning from scratch. So the 5th thing I would do is practice presentation skills. So a key part of most assessment centres is presenting, and I had no presentation practice prior to these assessment centres. So I kind of was practicing on the go. I absolutely bombed my presentation in my assessment centre for my current role. I still got the job, which is interesting. They kind of looked past it, but practice presentation skills as well. As a maths grad, like, you never get the opportunity to present anything. So you really have to find and seek out those opportunities. I think the perfect way to practice presentation skills is actually doing YouTube, because when I started in work and I went on presentation skills courses with work, essentially what they do is they tell you to write a quick presentation, get you to film it, and then get you to watch it, so you get that feedback loop going. And as I mentioned before, in the books by Daniel Kahneman, they talk about the ability to learn is related to kind of the speed and efficacy of your feedback mechanism. So if you are doing YouTube videos every week, you're essentially creating a presentation, presenting it to a camera, and then watching it back. You have to force yourself to watch it back. It's a bit painful, but yeah, it helps with the development of the skills. Then through doing that, naturally, you will get better at presenting. And that's something I've definitely found through doing YouTube. If you go back and look at my first videos, they're pretty terrible. So yeah, I definitely think that's helpful, and I wish I'd done that in preparation for my assessment centres, because presenting is a key part of those assessment centres. I should mention as well, actually, on the previous, collaboration is a key part of the assessment centres too, because you quite often get put in a group exercise and you kind of watched, and it's really important to show that you're working well with your teammates, and it's not a competition necessarily. It's about how do you work well in a team, how do you include others, and how do you take on board other people's opinions. So yeah, practice presentation skills for the assessment centre. So the 6th thing I would do is practice competency questions. So competency questions are very standard questions, like tell me about a time when you worked in a team, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with someone in the team, tell me about a time that you took a leadership position. Like, these are really generic standard questions that come up again and again in interviews. They're often the go-to for interviewers. So by the time you've been to all the assessment centres that you've applied to, you will have drilled these no end. I think it's really important to have basically 2 examples per competency that are different, and you want a different example for each competency as well. So you can't just use the same kind of story from your past every single time. So for example, I didn't want to use this time when I was working as a lifeguard for every single competency. Like, I was a leader as a lifeguard, I was part of a team as a lifeguard. Like, it's just boring. So you need the diverse experience base to work from. So yeah, make sure you have that. Prepare them, write them out. Even for some of the telephone interviews, you can have them in front of you. But yeah, make sure you've got all of those examples and all the competencies covered. That's the really kind of like baseline for all interviews, I would say. And it's really obvious if you haven't prepared. The 7th thing I would do is build my background, education and skills. Ideally, you would have a degree related to the job that you want to be doing, because it shows an interest, although it's not essential. They're definitely not allowed to screen you out based on your degree these days, so don't worry. That's why it's important to just do whatever degree you find interesting. But if you did a degree in finance, loved it, and you want to work in finance, then it kind of all works together. So yeah, definitely try and apply to jobs that favour your current degree. So I did maths, so financial maths and actuarial was a clear kind of forward path for a maths grad. But yeah, not essential at all. I know people that did economics at actuaries, and I think it might be a bit of a leap if you didn't do something that was mathematical, but don't let that stop you at all. So yeah, make sure your education is lined up for the job you want. It doesn't have to be. And then definitely read around the subject. So I wish I'd read more kind of popular books around finance and economics before I applied. because I think they're an easy read and give you lots to talk about. I do that now and I find it so beneficial, so I wish I'd done that. I then would read current affairs. So when you're applying to finance jobs and investment jobs, you get told to read the FT every day, and I started trying to do that. But one, as a student, the FT is really expensive, and two, I found it just too much, and it doesn't really explain things. It just reports things. And I used to read The Economist cover to cover every week, and I think that gave me a really good grounding in current affairs. And because it's kind of a week, it's very manageable. It's zoomed out a little bit. When I got asked in an interview what were my suggestions for fixing Eurozone, I gave an answer straight out of The Economist. And I think that contributed to me getting the job. And then the 8th thing I would do is network. So I didn't really do this either, but I would have networked more with people on my course that were interested in the same jobs. I would have networked more with the various people at the graduate fairs, and I would have networked more in my own personal network to try and get more involved in finance and economics in the work world, because any kind of work experience is going to help you and set your CV apart. So I wish I'd done more of that. I kind of went on my own sort of thing, thinking that everything was a competition, which I regret now. So definitely should have networked more, joined the Finance Society. But yeah, there we have it. That was my 8-step plan to get a grad scheme job based on my experience and my knowledge now. I hope you found this useful. If you want to hear more from me, don't forget to check out this one here. Thank you.